What's up, everybody? This is Chris Sarab bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicle. On today's show, we're going to talk about a helicopter crash with a emergency medical helicopter that happened here in California over in Sacramento, and try to dive in a little bit about all of these helicopter and plane crashes we've been seeing over the last couple of months. It's been crazy. After that, we're going to check out a fire that happened over at an aluminum plant in New York and how it's going to have ripple effects in the auto industry. And last but not least, we're going to talk about how the Trump administration is deciding that it is going to revoke $1.1 billion in funding for automakers to help with the sales of EVs, which I have a major problem with. All right, let's get started. First off, we're going to check out the story about a medical emergency helicopter that crashed over in Sacramento and hear the latest news on what happened.
Dramatic new video has emerged showing the moment a medical helicopter crashed onto a Sacramento, California highway. Here it is. You can see the chopper coming in from the top right of your screen there. It quickly loses altitude, then slams into the eastbound lanes of Highway 50. Officials say, here it is. You can see the chopper coming.
You see that? So it had to have lost functionality to be dropping like that. He's not even trying to keep it in the air.
From the top right of your screen there. It quickly loses altitude, then slams into the eastbound lanes of Highway 50. Officials say the chopper had just completed a patient drop-off at a nearby hospital when it suffered an in-air emergency on its return to base. 3 crew members were on board. They are now in critical condition. No one on the ground was hurt.
Yes.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch...
All right, so just a quick story. I mean, we've seen so many helicopter crashes and plane crashes over the last couple of, I don't know, months, maybe in the last 6 months, to the point where we've seen, Jadakiss and Fat Joe talk about it. I've talked about it several times. You know, it's a big storyline, and I wonder if it's one of those situations where we're just seeing more of it because it's more video footage of these things, and that it's happening in the same intervals as it was happening before. And I did some research, and it's not. We've had an uptick in helicopter crashes over the last 6 months. Plane crashes as well. That tapered off over the last 3 months, but these crashes have been happening a lot, and we just. I know I was reading a story where they were talking about how they were trying to put this at the foot of the pilots, and pilots not having experience. Even talking about DEI pilots, which is not something that I'm very familiar with. I remember a story about how they were saying that. Something about Charlie Kirk saying that he didn't want DEI pilots flying his plane. I don't know if it was strictly related to a person of color. I don't really remember the story exactly, but what I'm truly saying is that do we have a problem or a personnel problem when it comes to the people that are flying these planes and these helicopters? I remember not too long ago that they were having a hard time filling positions at as traffic controllers, and they were having some hard times even filling positions as pilots. So I don't understand why we're having all this epidemic of crashes when it comes to helicopters and planes. I don't want to think that it is a prerequisite to something else, but I think that we definitely have to figure out why, have to step up our evaluation of the people who are flying these planes, and of course have to step up the research and the evaluation of these vehicles, because in this situation we did kind of see that the plane itself had to have suffered some kind of emergency. So it's not about the pilot in this situation, I don't think. And the fact that they all survived but they're in critical condition tells us that the pilot had some ability to avoid something catastrophic happening and, saving him and the other 2 people who were on board. So I think that we could probably throw out the idea that is, related to the pilot being not trained well or anything like that. But we have to monitor this. We have to study this. We have to understand why, these planes, the helicopters continue to have these problems. If it's a situation where the mechanics are not doing their jobs when they're evaluating these vehicles before they go up in the air. We also have to evaluate if it's a situation where the pilots of these vehicles are just not being trained well, not staying trained well, and suffering situations where they don't know the correct thing to do. Because if you're flying a plane or a helicopter, you have always, in those situations, standardly, you have several people's lives in your hands. So you have to be very trained and make sure that the equipment that you're using is working well, or don't go up into the air. All right, so let's keep going. This is going to be our main storyline of the day. We're really going to talk about plants, and automotive plants in particular, because this new situation where the Trump administration is deciding that it may revoke some funding that it was going to give to the automotive industry is a big problem for me. So first, we're going to start off with a story about a fire at an aluminum plant over in New York that they're saying is going to have a lot of ripple effects when it comes to the automotive industry. Let's check it out.
Been just over 24 hours now since a fire broke out in a hot mill at the Novelis aluminum plant in Scriba. The company tonight says production is halted.
Novelis supplies at least 350,000 metric tons of sheet aluminum for auto production each year. The hot mill where sheet aluminum is produced for vehicles is now a total loss, and the plant itself will be offline until early 2026. Ford is the plant's largest customer, with its top-selling F-150 a main user of aluminum components. Other automakers, including Toyota, Hyundai, Volkswagen, and Stellantis, also buy aluminum from Novelis. Now those automakers are scrambling to find another supplier before their operations are impacted. The supply chain disruption comes at a time when the auto industry is facing other economic headwinds, including a worldwide shortage of semiconductors and a reliance on China for rare earth magnets. Novelis says it is trying to minimize the impact of the fire at its upstate New York plant by looking to its other aluminum-producing plants in Europe, Brazil, and South Korea. However, tariffs could complicate that process, as President Trump has imposed a 50% tariff on all aluminum imports. For more unbiased updates, download the Straight Arrow News app or go to san.com.
So, as you can see, that's going to be a major problem for a lot of automakers, not only the ones here in the U.S., but other automakers as well. And, I don't see that the tariffs becoming a problem. I know that if it becomes a situation where, this becomes a major issue and the president is made aware, I would hope that he would make moves to allow for us, Scriba or Novelis to get aluminum from these places to keep the flow of aluminum going for these automakers so they don't have any stops in production or any things like that. But my problem is that it is that fear that, if Novelis is having major problems with its aluminum and then they start slacking on the supply of aluminum, and then these automakers or these factories that work with this aluminum have to shut down or have to cut hours and things of that nature because they don't have the aluminum to do the jobs. That is when it becomes a problem for me. And it always bothers me when I see these type of things, fires at these factories, and it blows my mind because these factories are supposed to be designed to the point where they can withstand such things. They are supposed to have massive sprinkler systems, and they're almost, it's almost law that you have these things because you have so many people working for you, so many employees in the factory, and so many opportunities that a fire or something like that could start. So it amazes me to the point that this fire, consumed this whole factory, without any break or stop. It just amazes me. I don't want to jump onto a conspiracy bag, as it were, and say something like this was a planned or made fire. But for a fire to go out into which of course it's an aluminum factory. Of course, there's lots of things that could start a fire, but of course there's lots of things that could put a fire out as well. So it's hard to understand how this whole factory is consumed. But my major problem is that of course all of the automakers that it's going to affect, most of the automakers it's going to affect. And when it comes to affecting automakers, you're really just talking about affecting the employees of the automakers. All right, so last but not least, we're going to check out this story where the feds have decided that they are going to revoke $1.1 billion awarded to all kinds of automakers to help with the manufacturing of EVs. So let's read this story. We're going to get into this and see how we feel. Okay, so this is going to be from MSN. This is a story. Feds may revoke $1.1 billion awarded to General Motors, Stellantis for EV manufacturing, says report. Story by Emmett White, and this is from 9 hours ago. The transition from gasoline-powered vehicles to battery electric propulsion requires adaptation by all involved parties. Surely, but there's arguably no stakeholder more affected than those who actually produce the vehicles. Retooling factories that produced internal combustion models for decades cost a pretty penny. And now domestic automakers like General Motors and Stellantis may have to dip further into their savings after a series of previously promised federal grants to help with the transition might be canceled. Reporters at Reuters have reportedly viewed documents from the U.S. Department of Energy that indicate that federal agency is considering canceling around $1.1 billion in retooling grants awarded to the two domestic automakers. Specifically, GM was set to receive $500 million to convert its Lansing Grand River assembly plant for EV manufacturing, while Stellantis was slated for $335 million to revive its shuttered Belvidere assembly plant for EV pickup production, and $250 million to convert its Indiana transmission plant into an EV parts factory. All where I'm from. GM's Lansing facility was previously home to production of the Chevrolet Camaro, as well as decades of Cadillac sedan models. It continues to produce the Cadillac CT4 and CT5 lines, though the automotive conglomerate has expressed its interest in expanding its production capabilities for years. GM even announced its plans to expand manufacturing plans to include EVs as a result of the grant award back in 2024, citing the importance of a resilient supply chain and the necessity of offering a wide array of vehicles to its customer base. Stellantis' stake in this grant award is arguably more vital, as the $335 million subsidy would allow the automaker to reopen its idled Belvidere, Illinois plant. The factory most recently produced models like the Jeep Cherokee and Dodge Dart, but has a pedigree dating back to the L-body Dodge Charger hatchback and the Chrysler New Yorker Fifth Avenue, one of my favorite vehicles. Following the end of Jeep Cherokee production in 2023, the plant was idled and has remained in limbo since. However, Stellantis announced plans to reopen this facility by 2027, earlier this year, with a focus on producing a mid-sized EV pickup truck. These projects are part of a broader set of federal subsidy awards that are on the chopping block, totaling over $12 billion. Damn. Reporting from Reuters suggests that these cuts stem from deficit left by the continuing government shutdown. However, the Department of Energy has been on a bottom-line padding tear lately, as it recently announced plans to cancel $7.56 billion in financing for hundreds of energy projects that the agency claims wouldn't serve American taxpayers. Big groundbreaking reversals have been a key strategy of President Donald Trump's administration, and this leaked announcement certainly follows that trend. The Trump administration has also expressed disdain for electric vehicles at large, having officially killed the EV tax credit established under President Biden and attempting to skirt funding additional electric infrastructure. It's hard not to see this potential cancellation of grants as falling in line with these anti-EV sentiments, but we'll have to wait and see if the current administration actually follows through with it. In the meantime, we suspect there are extreme contingency plans under discussion at GM and Stellantis, ones that could involve pausing these manufacturing advancements altogether. Alright, so that, my friends, was a mouthful. And what I'm saying is that I am truly not behind this whatsoever. I am truly the guy that's saying to you that we need to do everything in our power to get these automotive industries back up and running. We let them die out for too long. We shipped so much of the work overseas. We outsource so much of these things, and at this point, we have to do everything in our power to build these automotive industries up. And that if that is grants that were given under the Biden administration, we need to keep that going. If they made plans to do these things that and of course, for me, all I care about is the people working at these plants, the people in these cities that these plants reside in. Those are the things that I truly care about when it comes to this situation. And these places have made plans to rebuild these plants, specifically Belvedere, which we've done several stories over, even the one in Lansing. We've done several stories on these plants, how the jobs that they've lost, the closings that they've had. It's been horrible for the automotive industry. And this is just another horrible thing if it happens, and if it's true that is going to happen to the automotive industry and the people who work in the automotive industry. I have friends in Indiana who are planning for that plant. And it's not even technically a plant, it's more like a parts hub. But they're planning for it. They're planning around it. And that's what happens when these things come out, that these things are happening. At the Belvedere plant in Lansing, you know that once these things came out and people were notified that these things were going to happen, people started making plans for those areas, building stores and restaurants and all these other things to build those areas up that are now depleted because these factories and these plants have been closed for so long. You just don't understand the destruction that an area, city, even a state goes through when a massive plant dies. So many people lose their jobs. So many people lose their homes. So many people lose their relationships. And then you talk about the depression that comes from it. All of the bad things that you can think of that could happen when you lose your job. And this we saw and we hoped was a shining star in the sky, that the automotive industry would get rebuilt to the point where it was back in the day when UAW was big and everybody was working in the factories in the automotive industry and Ford and all these other places and making fantastic money and living fantastic lives. That's what we need to get back to. And this is not going to help. We've already lost production on plants. The massive Hyundai plant that was temporarily shut down because of the immigration problem that they had. All of the things that we relied on, that Trump talked about when he talked about the automotive industry, the building of these plants, the Hyundai plants, the plants over in Indiana, Wisconsin, all these things that he talked about when he was, vying for the opportunity to become president. These are the things that we still need to come true when it comes to the automotive industry. And we need Trump and all these other people to understand that the automotive industry needs this so bad. Now, we don't know that this is true. And if it is true, what I will say is that I truly believed in the whole tariff situation that Trump put forth. I believe that we should be collecting that money from these other countries. And I think that money should, a mass portion of that money should go into the automotive industry, because I think that a mass portion of that money should or is made from the automotive industry. Imports of cars, exports of cars, things of that nature. The steel. We understand that we need to infuse the automotive industry because it has suffered so much. And we have to understand that more back in the days, but what I would love to get back to was that there was a massive percentage of people who worked in the automotive industry, whether it's working at a factory, a plant, a dealership, a parts outpost, whatever it may be. The automotive industry fed many people for a extremely long time. And we need to get back to that. And we won't get back to that if we're taking money from these automakers that, by and large, they did it to themselves. We all understand this. But Trump did say that he was going to help them get back to where they were. And I truly don't care about the companies themselves. I care about their employees. All right, guys, I'm going to let y'all get up out of here. It was a quick show. Not a lot going on this week, but just jumped in to let you know I'm thinking about y'all. Now, take care of yourselves. Please hit the like, share, subscribe button. If you have any questions, hit me in the DMs. And I'm out. Peace.